The Exilari Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their war fleets were unmatched, their technology far superior to most known species. No one dared challenge them. Until today. A massive warship had entered their borders, moving slowly without any response to hails or warnings. It was unlike anything the Exilari had ever seen. Its structure was strange, ancient yet advanced, silent yet full of unknown energy. Inside the Exilari command station, Supreme Strategist Vulik stood before the central holo-display, his eyes locked onto the image of the approaching vessel. "Begin a full scan," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. The technicians worked quickly, activating the most advanced scanning systems available. Waves of data began flooding their screens as the warship's structure was analyzed. At first, everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. The scan results made no sense. This isn't possible," one of the analysts muttered, his scaled hands trembling. "The armor is absorbing our scans." Vulik narrowed his eyes. "Explain." The lead scientist hesitated before speaking. "Every material in the galaxy leaves a signature. We can detect what something is made of just by scanning it. But this ship, its hull doesn't match any known material. Every time we try to identify it, the readings change, as if it's alive," another technician finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Vulik didn't respond. He studied the readings carefully. The ship wasn't just resisting their scans. It was learning from them. Then another alert sounded. "Sir, there's something else." A new section of data flashed onto the main screen. It showed the ship's energy output. The numbers kept rising, climbing higher and higher until they exceeded anything the Exilari had ever recorded. "This can't be right," one of the analysts said. "The energy signatures are beyond even our dreadnoughts. It's running at 500% efficiency. That's impossible." Another technician gasped. "There are weapons all over the ship. Dozens. No, hundreds." Vulik's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. "What kind of weapons?" The technician hesitated, his voice shaking. "Unknown, sir. Some of them resemble plasma cannons, but their energy readings are off the scale. Others have no known signature. It's as if they were designed to adapt to any target." The room fell silent. Then, the most terrifying alert came through. "Sir, the ship is scanning us back." Vulik's blood ran cold. "What?" The main holo display flickered. A new signal had appeared, one that didn't come from the auxiliary systems. It came from the human warship. The readings showed something horrifying. Every auxiliary vessel in the area, every single one, was now being analyzed in real time. The human ship was running deep scans, mapping out their weaknesses, their tactical systems, their entire fleet structure. The warship wasn't just watching. It was learning how to destroy them. Panic spread through the command center. Officers whispered among themselves, their confidence shattered. The Exilari were used to being the hunters, but now, for the first time in their history, they were the prey. Vulik's breathing was slow, controlled. His mind raced through the possibilities. He had never feared an unknown ship before. The Exilari Empire had fought countless wars, crushed hundreds of species, and dominated entire star systems. But this warship was different. It had entered their space without fear. It had absorbed their scans. It had learned their weaknesses. And now, it was watching them. Vulik turned to his officers. "Send a message to the High Council." His voice was quiet, but the weight of his words was heavy. "Tell them, we may have made a mistake." The human warship remained silent, drifting like a predator in the dark. And for the first time in Exilari history, the Empire felt true fear. The command center of the Exilari fleet was in chaos. Officers rushed between control stations, their faces filled with fear. The human warship had done nothing. No weapons fired, no threats made, yet the Exilari felt completely exposed. Supreme Strategist Vulik stood motionless, staring at the screen. The scan results were still coming in, and the more he saw, the worse it became. "This is impossible," whispered one of the lead scientists. "No species has ever built a ship like this. Not even the Primary, not the Vorlon. No one." Vulik forced himself to remain calm. He was the highest-ranking officer in this sector. He couldn't allow fear to spread. "Give me a full analysis. I need every detail." The technician swallowed hard. "Sir, its armor plating is unlike anything in our records. It doesn't just absorb energy, it redirects it." Vulik's eyes narrowed. "Meaning? If we fire on it, our own attacks could be used against us." The silence in the room deepened. One of the weapons officers spoke up, his voice shaky. "Sir, even our most advanced warships wouldn't stand a chance against that kind of defense." Another alert flashed across the screens. The energy readings from the human warship had spiked again. One officer gasped, "Sir, the ship, it's moving." Vulik turned sharply toward the display. The warship had remained still for over an hour, but now it was coming to life. Its engines ignited, silent, eerie, and far too powerful for a ship of its size. The entire auxiliary fleet watched as the human vessel began to drift forward, slowly but with purpose. Then another signal came through. One of the technicians looked up, his scales pale. "Sir, we are receiving a message." Vulik's claws dug into the metal armrest of his command chair. "From where?" The technician's voice trembled. "From the human warship." The room held its breath. The auxiliary had never spoken to a human before. Their species was considered young, unimportant, barely worth the attention of a great empire. And yet, here they were, standing before a warship that could rewrite everything they thought they knew. Vulik took a slow breath, opened the channel. The transmission crackled for a moment. Then a voice came through. A deep, steady voice. A human voice. "This is the UHS Revenant. You have scanned us. We have scanned you. Now, we will speak." The words sent a chill through the entire command center. The auxiliary had expected threats, warnings, or even demands. But this message was different. It was calm, controlled, and utterly confident. Vulik straightened his posture. "This is Supreme Strategist Vulik of the Auxiliary Empire. Identify yourself and your purpose." There was a pause. Then the human voice responded. "Your empire is vast. Your fleets are powerful. You believe yourselves to be superior." The words were spoken with no emotion, no arrogance, just facts. Vulik's jaw tightened. "We are the dominant force in this region of space. Your presence here is uninvited. If you do not state your purpose, we will be forced to." The human interrupted. "Your weapons will do nothing. Your defenses are weak. Your fleet is outdated. We have already calculated every possible attack you can make. None will succeed." A deadly silence filled the command center. No one dared to breathe. Vulik clenched his fists. "Is that a threat?" Another pause. Then the human spoke again. "It is a reality." At that moment, the lights flickered across the command center. Something was happening. "Sir, our long-range scanners are failing. Our targeting systems, offline. Our battle networks, compromised." Vulik's heart pounded. The human warship wasn't just speaking. It was acting. The auxiliary's most advanced systems were shutting down, one by one, as if an invisible force was tearing through their defenses. Then, the human warship did something even more terrifying. It transmitted a data file. A single document containing detailed weaknesses of every auxiliary warship in the fleet. Every ship, every vulnerability, every blind spot. The humans knew everything. Vulik's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a warship. It was a hunter. The human voice spoke one last time before the transmission ended. "You are not prepared for us. Do not interfere, or you will learn what true power is." The transmission cut. The screens returned to normal, but the damage was done. For the first time in auxiliary history, they had come face to face with something stronger than them. And the worst part, the humans hadn't even attacked. They had simply proven a point. The auxiliary were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. The silence in the auxiliary command center was deafening. Officers stared at their screens, their claws trembling over control panels that no longer responded. Their fleet was crippled. The human warship had not fired a single shot. It had not launched a single missile. Yet in mere seconds, it had turned the auxiliary's most advanced fleet into a helpless collection of floating metal. Supreme Strategist Vulik clenched his fists, his reptilian eyes locked on the data file the humans had sent. It was impossible. How could a species as young as humanity know so much about the Auxiliary Empire's warships? Their weaknesses, their hidden structural flaws. Vulik forced himself to stay calm. He turned toward his top officers. Damage report. Can we restore control? A technician frantically worked at his console, his tail twitching in panic. Sir, our primary systems are completely compromised. We've lost targeting capabilities, shield management, and long-range scanners. Another officer chimed in, his voice unsteady. Even our emergency backup systems aren't responding. Vulik's stomach twisted. The human warship had disabled them from the inside. A communications officer spoke next. Sir, we are receiving distress signals from our fleet. Every ship is reporting total system failures. Vulik's claws pressed into the metal railing. The Auxiliary Empire was feared across the galaxy. They had conquered worlds, crushed rebellions, and annihilated entire species. No one had ever done this to them before. And yet, the humans had done it without even trying. One of the younger officers whispered in disbelief, This is worse than war. Vulik turned sharply toward him. Explain. The officer swallowed hard. If they had simply attacked, we would have fought back. Even if we lost, we would go down with honor. He gestured at the frozen fleet outside. But this is humiliation. Vulik felt the weight of those words settle over the command center. He had spent decades preparing for war, studying enemy tactics, ensuring the auxiliary fleet remained undefeated. And now, one human warship had stripped away everything. The officer continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Sir, they didn't just beat us. They showed us that they don't even see us as a threat. The realization made Vulik's blood boil. The humans were toying with them. A beeping sound suddenly broke the silence. A new message appeared on the main screen. Another transmission from the human warship. Vulik took a deep breath. Put it through. The deep, steady human voice returned. We have allowed you to see what we are capable of. Your fleet is still intact. You still live. But that can change. The auxiliary officers tensed. We have watched your empire expand. We have seen your wars, your conquests. We know you believe yourselves to be the strongest. The voice paused, then continued with chilling certainty. You are mistaken. Vulik's hands clenched tighter. He refused to be spoken to like this. Not by a human. Why are you here? He demanded. The human's response was immediate. Because your empire is standing at the edge of something it does not understand. You believe power is measured by weapons and warships. But true power is knowing when to strike. Vulik's scales darkened with rage. Are you threatening the auxiliary empire? Another pause. Then the human voice responded. No, we are warning you. The transmission cut. The screen went dark. For several moments, no one spoke. Then, a loud alarm blared through the command center. One of the officers shouted, Sir, the human warship, it's gone. Vulik turned to the main display. The massive warship that had dominated their scanners, the vessel that had just crippled an entire auxiliary fleet without firing a shot, had vanished. No hyperspace signature detected, another officer confirmed, his voice shaking. It didn't jump to FTL. Another officer added, no cloaking disturbances either. It didn't just leave. It disappeared. Vulik stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans had shown them their power. They had left them helpless. And then, in the blink of an eye, they had chosen to leave. Not out of fear, not out of retreat, but because they had made their point. The Xilari were no longer the dominant force. And worst of all, the humans had let them live just to remember it. The Xilari War Council gathered in the High Command Chamber, a towering hall filled with ancient banners of past victories. Those banners now felt like mockery. For the first time in centuries, the Xilari fleet had been defeated without a battle. The human warship had come and gone, leaving behind nothing but silence and crippled warships. The Empire's greatest fleet had been rendered useless in mere seconds. Supreme Strategist Vulik stood at the head of the war table, surrounded by the most powerful military minds of the Xilari Empire. His scales twitched with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Let's be clear," he growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The humans did not attack us. They did not destroy a single ship. And yet, they proved that they could have." Silence. No one dared to speak. The warlords sitting around the table shifted uncomfortably, their claws tapping against the metal surface. They were used to conquering, not being conquered. Finally, one of the admirals spoke. "Supreme Strategist, we cannot let this go unanswered." Vulik's eyes narrowed. "You believe we should attack?" The admiral hesitated. "We should test their limits. If they can disable our ships, perhaps there is a way to counter them. We just need more information." Another warlord leaned forward. "Agreed. We need to study their technology. Their abilities cannot be limitless." A third officer, an older general with scars from past battles, slammed his fist against the table. "You are all fools. We don't even understand what happened." The room fell into uneasy silence. The general continued. "The humans did something to our fleet that we cannot explain. Our best engineers are still trying to figure it out. We were helpless, and if they had chosen to attack," his voice lowered, "we wouldn't be sitting here discussing it." Vulik nodded slowly. The truth was clear. The humans had given them mercy. Not out of weakness, not out of kindness, but as a warning. And that warning carried a terrifying message. "We could destroy you whenever we choose." Vulik's sharp claws scraped against the table as he considered their next move. "We cannot afford to appear weak," he finally said. "If we do nothing, other empires will see this as a sign that the Xilari can be challenged." The warlords nodded in agreement. The Xilari Empire had ruled through fear and power for centuries. If they showed hesitation now, their enemies would smell blood. Another officer asked, "Then what is our response?" Vulik's eyes glowed with a dark intensity. "We learn everything we can about these humans. Their weapons, their ships, their homeworld." A deep hush fell over the room. Vulik continued, "We will send spies, infiltrators, and analysts. We will uncover their secrets. We will find their weaknesses." He paused, his next words deadly serious. "And when the time is right, we will strike." The warlords exchanged glances. They knew the risks. The humans had already proven they were beyond anything the Xilari had ever faced. But the Xilari had built their empire by destroying the strong and crushing the powerful. They could not afford to stop now. An intelligence officer cleared his throat. "Sir, our first priority should be sending reconnaissance ships. We must gather data without drawing attention." Vulik nodded. "Deploy them immediately. I want every piece of information on that warship analyzed." Another officer hesitated before speaking. "And what if they find us first?" Vulik's voice was cold. "Then we will learn how to survive them." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, aboard the human warship Eclipse, Captain Elias Graves watched the Xilari fleet from the bridge. His officers stood in silence, observing the damage they had inflicted without firing a single shot. A tactical officer turned toward him. "Sir, their fleet is still struggling to regain control. Should we monitor their next move?" Graves smirked. "They'll come for us," he said, his voice calm. "They won't be able to resist." The officer frowned. "You think they'll try to fight us after what we just did?" Graves leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked onto the display screen. "The Xilari don't know how to be afraid," he said. "They only know war." A moment of silence passed before he added, "And when they come for us," he smiled, "we'll be ready." The Xilari reconnaissance fleet moved silently through the void, its ships cloaked in the most advanced stealth technology their empire had ever developed. Every sensor, every scanning device, every piece of technology was tuned to a single purpose: gather intelligence on the human warship. They had learned nothing from their previous encounter except one undeniable fact: the humans possessed power beyond anything that Xilari had ever faced. That power had to be understood, and if possible, it had to be stolen. Deep inside the command vessel of the reconnaissance fleet, Admiral Sarek stood with his arms crossed, staring at the holographic display before him. The human warship had disappeared from their immediate scanners, but that meant nothing. The Xilari knew how to track enemies across long distances. He glanced at his officers, each of them focused on their tasks. There was an air of nervousness in the room, something he had never seen before in his crew. Even the most hardened warriors of the Empire felt the unease after witnessing the effortless humiliation of their fleet. A soft chime rang through the command deck. "Sir," one of the technicians spoke, his voice filled with uncertainty. "We have located the human warship." Sarek turned sharply, stepping toward the display. The readings were strange. Normally, a warship's energy signature followed a predictable pattern, but the human vessel was different. Its readings fluctuated in ways that didn't make sense. It was almost as if the ship wasn't just a machine, but something alive, adapting, shifting, waiting. "Are they aware of our presence?" Sarek asked. "No signs of detection yet," the technician responded. "We are maintaining distance." Sarek narrowed his eyes. He didn't trust it. The last time they had scanned this ship, disaster had followed. He wouldn't make the same mistake. "Proceed with extreme caution," he ordered. "We need detailed readings on their technology. Focus on their weapons systems, shield frequencies, and engine output." The technicians worked quickly, feeding data into the Xilari intelligence network. At first, the scans seemed normal, revealing the standard readings one might expect from a warship. But then, something changed. The displays flickered, warning indicators lighting up across the board. "Sir, something is wrong," a junior officer said, his claws tightening around the console. "The ship's energy readings err." The screens went dark. Then, a voice. Not Xilari. Not one of theirs. A deep, human voice, calm and controlled, echoed through the command deck. "We see you." The room fell into chaos. Officers scrambled to reset their systems, override the interference, and regain control. But it was too late. The human warship was no longer a distant blip on their scanners. It was moving. Fast. And it was coming straight for them. Sarek gritted his teeth. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here. The Xilari fleet shifted, engines roaring to life as they tried to retreat. But the human ship didn't fire weapons. It didn't need to. One by one, the Xilari ships went dark. Their systems shut down. Engines offline. Shields offline. Life support flickering. Sarek watched in horror as his fleet became nothing more than floating wrecks in space, disabled without a single shot fired. A transmission came through. The same voice, calm and controlled. "This is your second warning. There won't be a third." Then, the human warship was gone. Sarek stood frozen, his mind racing. The Xilari Empire had been dominant for centuries. They had crushed countless civilizations, ruled through fear and strength. But now, for the first time, they were the ones who had been crushed. And the worst part, the humans still weren't fighting them. They were just playing with them. The Xilari fleet drifted helplessly in space, their systems still dark, their warships reduced to silent wrecks. Panic spread through the command deck as Admiral Sarek and his officers struggled to bring their systems back online. Every attempt failed. Every override was blocked. The human warship had left, yet its presence still haunted them like a phantom. Sarek clenched his jaw, his claws digging into the metal railing in front of him. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message. The humans had let them live. That was the most terrifying part. If the roles had been reversed, the Xelari would have annihilated their enemy without hesitation. But the humans, they had disabled the fleet with terrifying ease and then left. The silence was unbearable. Then, one by one, the emergency lights flickered back to life. The ship's systems struggled to reboot, and finally, the command deck's main screen crackled back online. The crew gasped at what they saw. On the display was a single message, written in the human language, translated instantly by the ship's eye. "Do not follow us." The words sent a cold chill through everyone in the room. Sarek inhaled sharply, forcing himself to remain composed. He turned toward his officers. "Get our systems back online. Now." The crew scrambled to comply, working frantically to restore power. Slowly, painfully, the ship's primary systems flickered back to life. Engines came online at minimal power, and shields remained weak, but at least they could move. The rest of the Xelari fleet was also regaining control, though the damage had already been done. Their pride, their confidence, it was shattered. Then something even more alarming happened. A new signal appeared on their sensors. Not the human warship, but something else. Something huge. "Sir," one of the officers spoke in a whisper. "There's another energy signature." Sarek's eyes widened as he examined the readings. This wasn't just one energy signature, it was multiple. And they were everywhere. Thousands of small, nearly invisible beacons surrounded the battlefield, their presence only noticeable now that their own systems had come back online. They had been there the whole time, silent, watching. Sarek gritted his teeth. The humans had left a warning system. If they so much as tried to track the warship again, if they made a single wrong move, the humans would know. A low growl escaped the Admiral's throat. "They've played us like fools." But there was no time for rage, no time for revenge. They had to return to the Xelari homeworld and report what had happened. Sarek turned toward his communications officer. "Send an encrypted message back to High Command. Tell them, the humans are more dangerous than we ever imagined." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if we do this, the Emperor might order a full-scale war." Sarek's expression hardened. War. That wasn't war back there. War meant fighting, struggling, resisting. What had happened to them wasn't war. It was a warning. And if they ignored that warning, then true war would come. And this time, the Xelari wouldn't survive. The Xelari fleet limped back to their homeworld, their warships damaged, their pride even more so. Admiral Sarek stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the vast darkness of space ahead. The journey home was long and silent. No one spoke of what had happened. No one dared to. But the thoughts wouldn't leave them. The human warship had defeated them without firing a single shot. It had rendered their advanced systems useless. It had let them live. And worst of all, it had warned them. Sarek clenched his fists as the transmission logs replayed in his mind. "Do not follow us." A simple message, but it carried a weight that even the Xelari, conquerors of dozens of worlds, couldn't ignore. The moment they arrived in Xelari space, the High Command was waiting. The Emperor himself had summoned Sarek for an immediate debriefing. As he stepped into the vast war chamber of the Imperial Palace, Sarek felt the stares of his fellow admirals, generals, and counselors burning into him. The Emperor sat on his golden throne, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Report," the Emperor ordered, his voice calm but firm. Sarek took a deep breath. "We encountered the human warship as expected. We moved to engage. But before a single shot was fired, they disabled us." The chamber erupted in murmurs. One of the war counselors leaned forward. Disabled. How? Sarek's jaw tightened. They shut down our systems completely. Every warship. Instantly. We had no defense. Silence. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. And what did they do after? They left, Sarek admitted, his voice low. But they left behind surveillance beacons, thousands of them, hidden in the debris field. They were watching us the entire time. And when we regained control of our ships, we received a final message. The Emperor leaned forward slightly. What message? Sarek hesitated. Then he spoke the words that had haunted him since that moment. Do not follow us. The war chamber was utterly silent. Then one of the admirals scoffed. This is nonsense. A single human ship against the Silari fleet. They cannot be as powerful as you claim. Sarek's eyes burned with fury. Then tell me, Admiral, why are we standing here? Why did I not destroy them? As we intended. The Admiral fell silent. Sarek stepped forward. The humans let us go. If they had wanted to erase us from existence, they could have. But they didn't. His voice hardened. Why do you think that is? No one had an answer. The Emperor exhaled slowly, tapping his claws against the golden armrest of his throne. You believe they were showing restraint? Sarek nodded. Yes, Your Excellency. And that is what terrifies me. Restraint meant control. The humans weren't acting out of fear. They weren't running. They were warning the Xilari. The Emperor considered this carefully. Finally, he spoke. For centuries, we have viewed humanity as a minor species. Primitive, weak. His gaze swept across the room. It seems we were wrong. One of the war counselors hesitated before speaking. Shall we prepare for war? Sarek's heart pounded. He already knew the answer. He could see it in the Emperor's eyes. No, the Emperor said finally. We will not provoke them. We will watch. We will learn. And if war ever comes, he looked at Sarek, we will pray it is not of their choosing. The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Sarek exhaled, knowing what this meant. The Xilari had ruled through conquest, but for the first time in their history, they had encountered something beyond their control. A power that didn't just fight wars. It ended them before they even began. And now, all they could do was wait.